My wife's been missing 2 days. Police won't do anything. I tracked her phone to Lake Lanier. I'm going out there myself.
On May 12, 2024, a man in Lawrenceville, Georgia, got into his car and drove off. He headed to Lake Lanier alone. He wasn't there to fish. He wasn't there to clear his head. He was looking for his wife. She had been missing for 2 days. The police told him to give it 48 hours. He tracked her phone himself, walked down a trail near Buford Dam, and found her body in a ravine 200 feet from the road. He called 911. He stayed with her until they arrived. 3 days later, the police showed up at his front door.
Marcus Thompson, you're under arrest for the murder of Denise Thompson. Turn around. Hands behind your back.
Not to update him, not to tell him they had a lead. They came to arrest him for her murder. They were wrong, but finding the truth would cost him more than anyone could have predicted. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Marcus Thompson was 38 years old. Grew up in College Park, south side of Atlanta. Worked his way through Georgia State, got a business degree, and told everyone he'd own something by 30. He made good on that. He built a car detailing shop on Pleasant Hill Road from nothing. One bay, one employee, word of mouth. Thompson's detail shop. It was his pride. But in 2023, he tried to expand. A second location in Duluth. It collapsed within 6 months and took $60,000 with it. What Denise didn't know was that the hole was deeper than he admitted. $40,000 in credit card debt, hidden across 3 cards, minimum payments only. Marcus was drowning quietly. Marcus and Denise Thompson had been married for 12 years. They lived in a 4-bedroom house on Sugarloaf Parkway in Lawrenceville, Georgia, a quiet suburb about 30 miles northeast of Atlanta. 2 daughters, Kayla, 9, and Amira, 6. From the outside, they looked like a family that had figured it out. Homeowners, working parents, church on Sundays, cookouts by the pool in the summer. Denise grew up in East Atlanta. Graduated nursing school at Georgia Baptist in 2010. Her mother still has the photo on the mantle, Denise in her white coat, holding her diploma like a trophy. And she lived up to it. She was loud about keeping things together, not in a dramatic way, but in the way that working mothers are loud. She managed the mortgage, the girls' schools, the grocery runs, the bills. She was an ER nurse at Piedmont East Side Hospital in Snellville, pulling night shifts, earning more than Marcus and never holding it over him. At least not out loud. Her co-workers called her reliable. Her neighbors said she was always put together, always smiling. If something was cracking underneath, she made sure nobody could see it. But something was cracking. Marcus was working 14-hour days trying to keep the shop alive. Denise was coming home from night shifts to a house that needed her more than her husband seemed to. They weren't fighting. They were worse than fighting. They were disappearing from each other. And when people disappear from each other inside a marriage, someone eventually goes looking for attention somewhere else. Remember that, because it matters. Friday, May 10th, 2024. Denise finished her shift at Piedmont East Side at 10 p.m. She clocked out, said goodnight to the charge nurse, and walked out the employee entrance. That was the last time anyone at the hospital saw her. The next morning, Marcus woke up and she wasn't home. That wasn't unusual on its own. Sometimes after a night shift, she'd stop at her mother's or sleep in her car in the driveway for an hour before coming inside. But by 9 a.m., he started calling. Her phone went straight to voicemail. He called the hospital. They told him she'd left at 10 the night before. He called her mother, her sister, her closest friend from work, a woman named Patrice. Nobody had heard from her. By noon on May 11th, Marcus called 911. And this is where the first failure happens. The dispatcher took the report. A Gwinnett County officer called him back an hour later and told him that Denise was an adult and that most missing person cases in the first 24 hours resolve themselves. They told him to wait. 48 hours. That's the window they gave a missing woman with 2 daughters and a car full of personal belongings sitting in a hospital parking lot. Her Ford Escape was still parked at Piedmont East Side. Her purse was on the passenger seat. Her hospital badge was clipped to the visor. Her phone was gone. Now think about this for a second. If a woman leaves voluntarily, if she walks away from her life on purpose, she takes her phone. She takes her wallet. She doesn't leave her ID badge hanging from her rearview mirror. But the police didn't go look at that car for another 2 days. Marcus spent May 11th and 12th calling everyone he could think of. Friends, relatives, urgent care clinics, shelters. Nothing. On the evening of May 12th, His daughter Kayla was playing on an old iPad, and Marcus remembered something. Denise had set up Find My iPhone on that iPad months ago so she could track the girls. She never removed her own phone from the account. Marcus opened the app. The last ping from Denise's phone, May 10th, 11:14 p.m., showed a location near Buford Dam Park at Lake Lanier, an hour and 14 minutes after she clocked out of the hospital, in the opposite direction from home. Marcus didn't call the police. I think at that point he'd given up on them. He simply dropped the girls off at their grandmother's house and then drove to the lake himself. Lake Lanier is about 20 miles north of Lawrenceville. Marcus got there after dark. He parked near the Buford Dam recreation area and walked down a gravel trail with his phone flashlight. He told police later that he almost turned around twice, that he didn't really believe he'd find anything, that he was hoping he wouldn't. About 200 feet from the main road, down a slope into a shallow ravine, he saw fabric through the brush. Then he saw her. Denise Thompson was lying face down in the dirt, partially covered with leaves and branches. She was still wearing her scrubs from the hospital. Marcus called 911 at 9:47 p.m. on May 12th. He was crying so hard the dispatcher could barely understand him. Officers arrived within 15 minutes. Crime scene techs within the hour. Marcus sat on the gravel trail, 50 feet from his wife's body, for 3 hours while they processed the scene. Then they took him to the Gwinnett County Police Station for a formal interview. The initial interview lasted about 2 hours. Marcus told them everything. Last time he saw Denise, Friday evening before she left for her shift. She kissed the girls goodnight, told Marcus she'd be home by midnight. The girls were staying at his mother-in-law's that weekend because Marcus had planned to do inventory at the shop Saturday morning. He said he went to bed around 11, woke up at 7, and she wasn't there. Detectives thanked him, told him they were sorry, told him they'd be in touch, and let him go. At that point, Marcus Thompson was a grieving husband, a man who had done the police's job for them, a man who had found his own wife's body because the system told him to wait. That would change in 72 hours. The lead detective on the case was Arlene Booker, a 16-year veteran of Gwinnett County PD homicide. And within 48 hours of that first interview, she started building a case against Marcus Thompson. Here's what she found. Marcus had $40,000 in credit card debt and a failing business expansion. Denise had a life insurance policy, $500,000, taken out in 2021. Marcus was the sole beneficiary. A neighbor, Ronald Avery, told detectives that about a week before Denise disappeared, he heard a loud argument coming from the Thompson house. He said Denise was screaming something like, "You're going to lose everything." Marcus was yelling back. Avery couldn't make out his exact words, but he described it as the worst fight he'd ever heard from that house. At this point, if you're watching this and thinking Marcus did it, I don't blame you. Debt, insurance money, a fight, an unconfirmed alibi, and the fact that he was the one who conveniently found the body at an isolated lake at night. Every piece pointed the same direction. On May 15, 2024, at 11:30 p.m., Gwinnett County Police arrived at Marcus Thompson's front door with an arrest warrant. Body cam footage shows Marcus opening the door in a black t-shirt, looking confused, then terrified. He was charged with the murder of his wife, Denise Thompson. Marcus spent 2 nights in Gwinnett County Jail before his attorney, a man named Curtis Blaine, secured his release on $250,000 bond. The conditions: GPS ankle monitor, surrender passport, no contact with the Thompson children without supervision. His own daughters. The man who had been raising them while their mother worked night shifts was now not allowed to be alone with them. And here's what gets me about this moment. Marcus Thompson had no criminal record, not a traffic ticket. He had cooperated with police from minute one. He had found the body himself. He had called 911 himself. And the system's response was to arrest him, take his children, and tell the public he was a killer. Before the DNA results were even back, the autopsy confirmed that Denise Thompson had been strangled. Time of death was estimated between 10:30 p.m. and midnight on May 10th. There were defensive wounds on her hands and forearms. She had fought back. And under her fingernails, the medical examiner recovered skin cells and DNA. On May 28th, the DNA results came back. They did not match Marcus Thompson. Now I need you to sit with that for a second. The police had arrested this man. They had put him in handcuffs in front of his neighbors. His face was on the local news. His business was suffering. His daughters were living with their grandmother. And the physical evidence from his wife's body pointed to someone else entirely. Detective Booker didn't drop the charges. Not yet, but she started looking at Denise's finances. And that's when the case cracked wide open. On June 1st, forensic accountants pulled Denise's bank records. On May 7th, 3 days before she disappeared, Denise had transferred $200,000 from the joint savings account to a new account at a different bank. The account was opened under the name Denise Holloway. Holloway, not Thompson, not her maiden name, which was Mitchell. Holloway was someone else's name. And finding out whose name it was changed everything. Terrence Holloway, TJ to anyone who knew him, 39 years old, born and raised in Bankhead, west side of Atlanta. Grew up without a father, raised by his grandmother in a shotgun house on Hollywood Road. He and Denise had gone to MLK Junior High School together back in the early 2000s. He was the loud kid, the one everyone knew, the one the girls liked. They dated briefly as teenagers. Then life took them in different directions. Very different directions. Because while Denise was building a nursing career and raising a family, TJ was in and out of the system. At 18, he walked into a gas station on Moreland Avenue with a sawed-off shotgun and walked out with $400 and a felony. Armed robbery. He got 5 years, served 3. After that came an assault charge, a girlfriend he put in the hospital. She refused to testify. Then cocaine. Possession with intent. 18 months in Reidsville State Prison. By the time he was 30, TJ Holloway had spent more years behind bars than in any job. Then something shifted, or seemed to. He got hired at a Midas shop on Camp Creek Parkway and held the job for 7 years. No arrests. No incidents. People around him thought he had turned a corner. But in September 2023, he was fired for chronic absenteeism. And just like that, the ground opened up again. By the time he reconnected with Denise 2 months later at a high school reunion, he was unemployed, 3 months behind on rent in a 1-bedroom apartment in East Point, and running out of options. Now here's what I want you to understand. When Denise met TJ again in November 2023, she wasn't meeting the 18-year-old kid from MLK Junior High. She was meeting a 39-year-old man with a violent record who was desperate for money. But TJ was charming. He told her he had changed, that prison had rebuilt him, that he regretted everything. And Denise, isolated, overworked, invisible in her own marriage, believed him. By February 2024, they were seeing each other regularly. By April, Denise told TJ she wanted to leave Marcus but was afraid of losing the house and custody of her girls. And TJ, the man with 3 felony convictions and $0 in his bank account, came up with a plan. The plan was this. Denise would take $200,000 from the joint savings account. She would stage her own disappearance. Leave her car, her purse, her badge in the parking lot. Make it look like something terrible happened. TJ would pick her up after her shift. They'd drive north, spend the night near the lake, and be in Asheville by morning. No one would know them. New life, $200,000 to build it with. And Denise said yes. Remember, this is a woman who worked 12-hour night shifts and came home to a husband who was never there. A woman who managed every bill, every school pickup, every doctor's appointment, and never got asked how she was doing. I'm not excusing what she did, but I understand how someone in that position starts believing that the only way out is to burn everything down. The problem was that the man holding the match was Terrence Holloway, and he had a different plan entirely. On the night of May 10th, Denise clocked out of Piedmont East Side at 10 p.m. She walked to her car, left her purse on the seat, took her phone, and got into TJ's Altima. TJ was waiting for her in the parking lot. They drove north to Lake Lanier, to a spot near Buford Dam Park that TJ had scouted earlier that week. This was supposed to be the beginning, the moment they disappeared together. But TJ never planned to disappear with her. He planned to disappear alone, with $200,000. Denise was the only person who knew about the money, the plan, the fake disappearance. Without her, there was no witness, no trail, just a missing woman and a grieving husband. At some point that night, standing by the water, Denise realized there was no car packed for Houston, no second suitcase, no plan for 2. And by the time she understood what was actually happening, it was too late. TJ strangled her near the water's edge. He dragged her body into the ravine and covered it with brush. He got back in his Altima and drove. By sunrise, he was in Birmingham, Alabama. He thought the body wouldn't be found for weeks, maybe months. He didn't account for one thing, that the police would do nothing and Marcus would do everything. If the police had actually searched for Denise on May 11th, if they had pinged her phone, checked the hospital cameras, done anything, they might have found her before Marcus did. And Marcus would never have been at that lake, would never have been arrested, would never have been forced to reveal the one thing he had spent his entire adult life hiding. But we'll get to that. On June 3rd, Detective Booker identified Terrence Holloway. She ran his name and his record came back: armed robbery, assault, narcotics. She pulled cell tower data from the night of May 10th. TJ's phone pinged off a tower near Lake Lanier at 10:48 p.m., 34 minutes before Denise's phone went dark. TJ was added to a nationwide warrant. On June 10th, U.S. Marshals picked him up at a motel in Birmingham. He had $14,000 in cash in a duffel bag. The rest of the money had already been moved through a series of prepaid cards and wire transfers. In the interrogation room, TJ was calm, almost rehearsed. He said yes, he had been seeing Denise. Yes, they were in love. But he denied everything else. He said Marcus found out about the affair and killed Denise in a jealous rage. He said he left Georgia because he was scared that Marcus would come after him too. He said he had nothing to do with the money. And here's the problem. His story was just plausible enough that the police couldn't dismiss it. Because Marcus Thompson still hadn't explained where he was the night his wife disappeared. His alibi, "I was home alone, the kids were at their grandmother's," was unverifiable. No camera footage, no witnesses, just his word. And in a murder case, your word isn't enough. On June 12th, the Gwinnett County DA's office added a new charge against Marcus Thompson: conspiracy to commit murder. The theory was that Marcus knew about the affair, knew about the money, and had worked with TJ to kill Denise for the insurance payout. It was wrong, but on paper, it didn't look wrong. Marcus's attorney, Curtis Blaine, sat him down and said something that Marcus later described as the worst moment of his life. Worse than finding Denise. Worse than the arrest. Blaine told him, "If you don't tell them where you were that night, you are going to prison for the rest of your life. They will convict you." And Marcus broke. He told his attorney that on the night of May 10th, he was not at home. He was at an apartment in Norcross with a man named Derek Lassiter. Derek was 35. He owned a barbershop on Beaver Ruin Road. They had been seeing each other in secret for 4 months. Marcus had known he was attracted to men since he was a teenager. He never told anyone. Not his mother. Not his pastor. Not Denise. He had spent 20 years building a life around a version of himself that wasn't complete. And now, to avoid a murder conviction, he had to tear that life apart. This is the moment that stays with me. The system didn't just fail Marcus Thompson. It put him in a room and told him, your freedom or your secret. Pick one. That's not justice. That's a man being forced to choose between prison and everything he's ever known. On June 13th, Marcus told Detective Booker the truth. On June 14th, Derek Lassiter was brought in for questioning. He confirmed everything. Marcus was at his apartment from approximately 9 p.m. on May 10th until 6 a.m. on May 11th. Derek provided their text message history, his apartment's doorbell camera footage showing Marcus arriving and leaving, and phone GPS data that matched both of their accounts. Every detail checked out. On June 15th, all charges against Marcus Thompson were dropped. With Marcus cleared, the full weight of the investigation shifted to Terrence Holloway. And once detectives stopped looking at the husband and started looking at TJ, the case built itself. The DNA under Denise's fingernails match. TJ Holloway. The $200,000, traced through 3 accounts, all opened with fake IDs that were later tied to TJ through surveillance footage at 2 different bank branches in Atlanta. Cell tower data put his phone at Lake Lanier on the night of the murder and on Interstate 20 heading west toward Alabama by 3 a.m. A gas station camera on I-20 near Oxford, Alabama captured his car, a gray 2011 Nissan Altima, at 4:17 a.m. on May 11th. He was alone. In August 2024, a Gwinnett County grand jury indicted Terrence Holloway on 4 counts: murder in the first degree, felony murder in the commission of a robbery, theft by deception, and tampering with evidence. He pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney, Dana Kirkwood, has signaled that the defense will argue that Marcus Thompson killed his wife after discovering the affair, and that the DNA under Denise's fingernails is from a consensual sexual encounter, not a struggle. It's a strategy. Whether a jury buys it with cell tower data, bank records, and a gas station camera pointing the other way, that's another question. The trial is set for November 2026. Marcus Thompson is 40 now. He still lives in the house on Sugarloaf Parkway. He still runs the detail shop on Pleasant Hill Road. Kayla and Amira are back home with him. He doesn't talk to the media. He didn't do interviews after the charges were dropped. The one thing that's publicly known is that his mother stopped speaking to him after the truth came out. His church asked him not to return. Kayla is 11 now. She's old enough to search her father's name on the internet. Old enough to read the headlines. Old enough to ask questions that no parent should have to answer. Marcus told a family member that the hardest conversation of his life wasn't with the detective, or his lawyer, or even Derek. It was with his daughter, sitting on the edge of her bed, trying to explain why the world suddenly looked different. The man who found his wife's body. The man who called the police. The man who was innocent. And his reward was losing his marriage, his mother, and his church, not because of anything he did, but because of who he is. Denise Thompson was buried on May 20th, 2024, at Eternal Hills Cemetery in Snellville. Over 200 people attended. Marcus sat in the front row with his daughters. He had buried his wife 5 days after being arrested for her murder. He hadn't been formally cleared yet. He sat there knowing that half the people behind him thought he did it. TJ Holloway sits in Gwinnett County Jail awaiting trial. He has been denied bail twice. If convicted of first-degree murder, he faces life without parole. Denise Thompson wanted a way out. She wanted to disappear. She just didn't plan on who would make it permanent. And the man she left behind, the one she was running from, turned out to be the only one who came looking for her. If this story made you feel something, subscribe. There are more cases like this. And if the trial verdict comes in, I'll cover it.